So let's talk about how you as an association leader can turn resistance to generative AI learning into an opportunity. Now, generative AI has a transformative potential, which is presumably why you're watching this video in the first place. It enhances member services and operations, so it's very, very helpful. It's both more efficient and effective, using less resources to get the same stuff done and having a bigger impact, getting more done with less, in other words. Now, in order to actually unlock its potential, you want to get widespread adoption of it by your staff and your volunteers. So this is why you really need to overcome resistance. And resistance is pretty inevitable. There's fears of job redundancy by staff, some fears of role changes by volunteers, and fears about technological complexity with non-tech savvy volunteers. Especially I've seen that when I help associations with these issues. There's lack of understanding of how generative AI can be relevant to the roles by staff and volunteers alike. And there's, of course, time constraints. People are always busy, and there's a lack of clear incentives for training as well. But people do recognize the need for change. For example, around a third of those surveyed by PricewaterhouseCoopers worry about the survival of their organizations without major transformation. And so there's widespread support for transformation. So leaders must really frame generative AI as a tool to enhance human efforts as they transform the organization. That is going to be key to address resistance. Also key is open communication on how it will impact the role and how, in order to build trust and have clarity for staff especially, but for volunteers as well. So highlight the benefits of generative AI, for example, how they can be used for quick reports and other use cases that are quick and effective where you can get small wins. People will definitely struggle as they adopt generative AI. So you want to normalize these struggles through success stories of peers who struggled with generative AI adoption, but then met with success. And create safe spaces for people to experiment with generative AI tools. Give them psychological safety, the ability to fail and not be looked down on if they do. Celebrate progress with certificates, with gift cards, with public recognition, tangible and intangible progress. It gives people status as well as some financial rewards for staff. For chapter leaders, you want to give grants to chapters that are especially successful in generative AI adoption. And promote persistence through having shared achievements. So have people share their stories of how they succeeded in generative AI adoption. In order to build effective training, you want role-specific AI training so that it's relevant to daily tasks. Don't just take an off-the-shelf approach. Use an expert who knows how associations need to adopt generative AI. For example, events teams can learn scheduling automation. I often see they're excited about that. Membership teams can use analytics for member segmentation and personalization of outreach. Have micro-learning so that people don't feel like they need to take up a ton of time, especially important for volunteers. 10 to 15-minute sessions to engage busy volunteers as well as staff. So have that content customized to your association's needs. Have hands-on demos that show practical applications, like using generative AI to create engaging graphics. So I worked with a national association as one example, with a number of chapters to overcome skepticism around generative AI, fears of job loss, and workload concerns around learning generative AI. So we had some targeted messaging linking generative AI to enhancing human contributions as opposed to replacing them. We focused first on quick wins, like how generative AI can be used to create social media posts, which is relevant for staff and volunteers alike. And we had generative AI ambassadors who are already using generative AI in the association lead peer training for staff and volunteers. And that helped boost adoption by 40%, which is great. We built a continuous learning culture. That's something you really need to think about. We fostered a community of practice for collaborative learning, and that's very helpful. We used a number of forums to share generative AI experience and insights, and continued it after the initial 6-month rollout. We tracked and shared metrics on the impact of generative AI in member services, and that's something that you should consider doing. And we made sure that leaders modeled how they use generative AI to encourage engagement by others. So in order to sustain engagement on generative AI learning like this, You want to embed AI learning as part of ongoing professional development. Have regular workshops to update teams on new capabilities of generative AI. Currently, it's the worst it will ever be whenever you're watching this video, and it will only get better over time. Rotate responsibilities to encourage peer-to-peer learning so that people learn different abilities, different skills of generative AI over time, and create feedback loops to continuously improve AI training so that people give you feedback on how they're using generative AI, what are the problems, what are the successes, and you can share those best practices widely. In order to implement generative AI effectively, you want to start by surveying staff and volunteers to identify the highest opportunity needs and what kind of barriers they're facing. Develop those short focused training sessions tailored to specific roles. Again, as I mentioned, appoint those AI ambassadors to champion adoptions within teams. Use success metrics to showcase generative AI's benefits. And remember that associations that embrace generative AI position themselves as innovators and thought leaders within their industry. If you've enjoyed this video, please make sure to subscribe wherever you checked it out, and email me with any questions at gleb@disasteravoidanceexperts.com. Again, that's gleb@disasteravoidanceexperts.com.